moving on to the theory of constraints. Well, what is this? The theory of constraints, it's a methodology for identifying the most important limiting factor or constraint. And what is a constraint? Well, really, it's just a bottleneck, right? We've got our manufacturing process. How do we become more efficient in our performance management? We remove bottlenecks, right? If we've got a whole production line, right, it's moving fast, and all of a sudden we hit this one bottleneck, and why is it called a bottleneck? I mean, I'm just doing this for my own fun now, right? Because a bottle, oh, that's a awfully drawn bottle. It's terrible, right? But a bottleneck, right? It's much smaller at the neck of the bottle, and so the water going in or flowing out is going to slow down here. So that is, we're not getting into a physics lesson here by any means, don't you worry. And it's a constraint in your process. So if your production line is going along, and all of a sudden, let's say this is your distribution. Well, your distribution is your bottleneck, and the theory of constraints is here to address that. Right? So it's a methodology for identifying the most important limiting factor. So the most important constraint, or the most harmful constraint that stands in the way of achieving a goal, and then systematically improving that constraint until it is no longer the limiting factor. So in manufacturing, this constraint is also known as a bottleneck. We've got 5 points, 5 factors in this theory of constraints. In terms of memorization, yes, technically you should memorize these. Is it the most important thing out there? No, it is not. Just going over it a little bit and knowing the theory of constraints has to do with bottlenecks, right? Has to do with improving your manufacturing process. So in the identify phase, this is where we identify the current constraint. So this is the single part of the process that limits the rate at which the goal is achieved. Next, exploit. So we make quick improvements to the throughput of the constraint using existing resources, also known as make the most of what you have. Next, subordinate. Review all other activities in the process to ensure that they are aligned with and truly support the needs of the constraint. Next, if the constraint still exists, if it has not moved or has not been dealt with, consider what future further actions can be taken to eliminate it from being the constraint. Normally, actions are continued at this step until the constraint has been broken or reduced or gotten rid of, until it's been moved somewhere else. In some cases, capital investment may be required, right? So if your machine is being garbage, it's not working too well, then buy a new machine or replace the machine or improve it, fix it up. Lastly, repeat. So the 5 focusing steps are a continuous improvement cycle. That's what this is. Therefore, once a constraint is resolved, the next constraint should be immediately addressed. Now, in theory, there's always something that's going to be a constraint, right? There's always going to be part of the production line that is a little bit slower. And that's because, okay, you address that one, then another one will be the slowest. You address that one, then another one will be the slowest. And until you cut everything down to 0, that's just not how production works, then yes, there will always be a constraint. So this is, kind of in theory as well, but something you do until you eliminate everything you can. This step is a reminder to never become complacent. Gosh, you can never rest. There's no time to rest. Aggressively improve the current constraint and then immediately move on to the next constraint. There's no time to sleep, everyone. Just keep moving along and knock out those constraints. Hey there! Are you ready to not only pass your CPA exams, but truly understand and enjoy the material while studying? I know it seems impossible, right? Especially to enjoy the material? We'll do it together. Tap into the power of CPA.examprep.ai, where we've got personalized quizzes, multiple choice questions, memorization guides, flashcards, simulations, all tailored to your learning. Our adaptive study planning puts you on the fastest path to success and lifts you back up if you fall behind. Avoid wasting your precious time and money attempting an exam with a low chance of passing, because who wants that? We want to get you through this process as quick as possible. Our exam readiness prediction lets you walk in with confidence, knowing that you're prepared for success on exam day. Thankfully, there's no payment method needed to get started, so why don't you come join us? Visit cpa.examprep.ai and let's achieve your exam success together.